men as well, who've taken a career break and are now getting back into the workforce. And while we could spend probably at least 2 full days talking about returning to work after a career break, I'm hoping in this brief time that we have together today, I'll be able to share with you some thoughts and, more importantly, some practical takeaway ideas that you can implement in your job search. So let's get started. And let's start with the elephant in the room. And people who know me, which is probably no one on this call, but that I don't beat around the bush. And so the elephant in the room is that looking for a job is tough and it can be scary. And anybody who tells you differently, in my opinion, has not looked for a job in a long time. Looking for a position today is very different than it was even 5 years ago. And technology has been a big influence on this. And so that's why I like to think of a job search as more of an exploration. It just sounds a lot more positive. It just feels a lot more positive. So now that we're done with the elephant in the room, let's talk about how do you get started. And I firmly believe that the first step is in making a conscious decision about why you're returning to the workforce. Many of you might have always planned to return to the workforce. You worked, you had your career, you had some kids, you decided to stay home for a little bit, but the plan was always to go back. Sometimes finances can be the reason that you're returning to the workforce, or maybe you're returning just a little earlier than you had planned on. And, maybe a spouse has lost a position, or all of a sudden they're not receiving bonuses anymore, and that's made a big impact on your finances. College tuition is astronomical. I have 2 kids in college. They both go to private schools. I definitely know how much that costs. Or you're in an empty nest phase where now a lot of the volunteer things you were involved in have sort of dried up because your kids are now off to college, or maybe they're off on their own working. And what I think is probably the worst reason to return to the workforce is because other people think that you should. And I would definitely, if that's the reason, I would definitely rethink why you're doing that. So think about, are you looking for a job or a career? Both are good answers. Just be honest with yourself. And give some thought as to what are the important attributes of a new position. Is pay important, flexibility, the ability to advance, maybe part-time versus full-time? I think these are just some basic foundational thoughts to really maybe even put down on paper and be able to measure positions against and opportunities against as you get going. I feel there's really 4 key ingredients for a successful return to work. And I don't know that any one of them is more important than the other. I think they're all in conjunction incredibly important. Being current, investing in yourself, building your confidence, and making your job search a priority. And to be honest, whether your break has been a year, 20 years, or you're currently working and you're looking for another position, these are important attributes of a successful search. So let's look at each of these in just a little bit more depth. Being current. Technology. This is such a big deal today. No matter what type of position you're going to be looking for, technology is going to be a part of it. And this is, I would say, one of the biggest stumbling blocks that I see in people returning to the workforce that have been out for a while. If you've kept up on technology, fabulous. That's great, and you should be applauded, and you will benefit from that. If you haven't, figure out how to get more involved. Take classes. If you haven't used Word or Excel or PowerPoint in a while, maybe take a refresher class. But more importantly, become a user. Because taking a class is one thing, but actually using a piece of software over and over and over is totally different. Find opportunities, to be able to use those tools. Volunteer opportunities are great to do things like this. There's not a lot of pressure when you're trying to maybe do an Excel spreadsheet for some finance group that you're involved in, or volunteer to do the school newsletter, which is in Publisher, just so you get exposure to that piece of software. But find opportunities to be a user. Social media, whether
we already had a question come in.
Oh, go ahead.
About this. So the question that came in was, should we just take a class, and where can we find those classes, or should we go into a whole degree program and really refresh our skills? It was a question kind of about education and how much to invest before you get into the career.
Well, the answer is it depends. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, but certainly if you're looking to if you're looking to take a class in Excel or Word or something like that, a local college or sometimes the local high schools have classes like that. I think that those are perfectly fine. If you are, looking at other types of classes, like maybe something related to accounting or finance or a certificate programming, that's a whole different realm. And I would really caution people to make sure that they're taking the right kinds of classes for the right reasons before they embark on those programs. So I'll talk a little bit more about talking to other people, but talking to people in your industry about whether that's valuable or not, I think is a good measuring rod.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So social media is also important. For some fields more than others. Certainly if you're in marketing or any kind of communications field, being up to date on blogs and Twitter and Pinterest and everything else out there, I think is important. And LinkedIn, I am a huge fan of LinkedIn. I know Annie and I are linked together, connected on LinkedIn. Having a profile on LinkedIn is really just as important as having a resume. And if you're not on it already, I think you'll find it to be a great tool in connecting with people and in networking and in your search. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. As far as being current, be up to date with trends and what's going on in the industry you're interested in. Read the Wall Street Journal, read trade publications, read online blogs, join professional groups, including LinkedIn groups, but those are all virtual groups, but you can get a lot of information from those groups, but also groups where you can attend a workshop or a webinar or conferences or meetings. It's a great way to get to know people and to be up to date on what's going on. In addition to being current, people ask me a lot about age discrimination, so I'm just going to kind of put it right out there. And my feeling on that issue is that there's certain things you can control and things you can't control. And sadly, one of the things we cannot control is how old we are. But the things we can control are being current on technology, having a high energy level, and looking from a hairstyle and the way we dress and all of that kind of thing, having a very current look. And so I don't get too wrapped up in the whole age discrimination thing. I think control what you can and don't worry about the rest. So that's being current. Let's go on to the second one, which is investing in yourself. And you'll see that there's threads that these all kind of tie together. Related to the question that Annie asked me a few minutes ago about taking classes and attending workshops or conferences or some kind of certification program, again, I would talk to people and see what makes the most sense, because you don't want to just take things to take them. It's just going to get you frustrated, and it's going to potentially be a waste of time. But if, for example, you think you want to get into something related to project management, that's kind of what you did, 10 years ago when you were working, maybe getting getting in a certificate program that I know University of Chicago has one on project management might be a great idea, a good way to update your skill set, to make sure everything you know is current and relevant, and also start making some connections.
And so we had a quick question, Mary Beth, about where do you find information about these conferences and workshops? How do you recommend people search these things out if they haven't been involved for several years?
Well, I'm a big Google person. It is amazing the things that literally, if you just Google, I don't know, accounting conferences Chicago, the things that will pop up is amazing. When I first started my business 3.5 years ago, I wanted to be in some networking groups, and I just started, Googling, professional women networking groups, and was able to find some and join a few. So I would do that, but I would also ask people. If you know people in the field, ask them, what groups do you belong to? Do you know any conferences coming up that might be good for me? I think those are, people that you know would be good resources as well. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Making sure that your wardrobe and your hairstyle and all that, it sounds kind of silly, but, sometimes people are stuck in the 80s. And, working with a coach, and that's a little, plug for my livelihood, can help you, stay accountable and be up to date and help you with a lot of things. And it's all about investing in yourself. And I find frequently that, and now I'm going to say something kind of sexist, men are much more willing to invest in themselves than women are, and we will very easily plunk down maybe $1,000 so our kids can be on a travel soccer team, and oh, by the way, there is no way this kid will ever play professional soccer and or receive a college scholarship in soccer, but if they have an opportunity to attend a workshop and it's going to cost $100, they'll say, oh gosh, it's not in the budget. And I just think that, that's just so penny-wise and pound foolish. Really, your job search and your career are really all worth it. So think about it as an investment. And my guess is that you're going to recoup the cost of your investment by either getting a job offered just a little bit sooner or finding maybe a little higher paid position or higher level position. So again, invest in yourself. You might think that suit you bought in the 1980s, spent a lot of money on it, still looks good. Let me tell you, it doesn't. Okay, so big hair, big shoulders, pads no longer in, be current. And again, this is going to help with this third one, which is building your confidence. We all know that when we feel good, we feel, and we look good, we feel more confident in ourselves. Never apologize for taking a career break to either be with your kids or maybe elderly parents, or maybe taking a step back in your career to create some balance in your life, or maybe you're laid off right now. Never apologize. There's nothing that you did that was wrong. It was a decision that was right for you at the time. It is what it is, and treat it in a very matter-of-fact way. And don't downplay yourself. I find people sometimes use the just when they go to describe something. So, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm just a receptionist. I'm just a whatever. If you don't value yourself, nobody else will. So listen to what you say and be a little cognizant of how you're portraying yourself. Another good way to build your confidence is to value your skills and your strengths. I've decided that I'm old enough that I don't focus on my weaknesses anymore. I only focus on my strengths because I know I have a lot of weaknesses. So what the heck, I'm just not focusing on those anymore. What are you good at? What comes easy to you? And don't downplay things that are easy to you, because what is easy to you is obviously a strength and one that a lot of other people don't have. Ask other people for their input. What do they see as your skills? What do they see as your strengths? What kinds of positions would they see? You know, if they were you, what kinds of things would they be looking for? I think these are all great ways to build our confidence and help us in our job search. Making your job search a priority. This is a really tough one. And again, it's tough for anybody, no matter if you are taking a career break or not, or you're currently working looking for a job. In one of the early slides, we talked about why you're returning to the workforce. And I really believe if you're serious about it and it's important to you, then you're going to make the time and you're going to make it a priority. So set some goals. Set weekly goals, monthly goals, but be realistic. Don't come up with a huge laundry list of a million things that you're going to do when it wouldn't even be physically possible if you didn't sleep or do anything else that week. But have weekly goals like, I want to have 5 networking meetings, and I want to research 10 companies, and I want to apply to 10 positions. So have some, and change those goals as you get into your search and you figure out what works best and what's more reasonable than not. And hold yourself accountable. The advantage of working with somebody, a coach or even a friend who's in a job search, is that you have somebody besides yourself that you are making commitments to. And it's always amazing. If I tell Annie I'm going to get her a presentation by Friday, guess what? I'm going to do it. But if I tell myself I'm going to finish that by Friday, something might come up, and all of a sudden Friday turns into Saturday, turns into the next Friday. So try and hold yourself accountable in whatever way works for you. And you've heard the comment before, looking for a new position is a full-time job. It really is. Does it mean you have to spend 40 hours a week? No, you don't have to spend 40 hours a week, but you need to give it significant time and consecutive time, too. I was meeting with a woman over the summer who was a stay-at-home mom, was going to go back into the workforce, and she told me she was really serious about it, but her kids were going to only be in summer camp, I don't know, her kids were younger, a couple of days a week or a couple mornings a week. So she was going to spend 2 hours twice a week on her job search. So that's 4 hours. Well, it's like anything in life, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And spending 4 hours a week on a job search is probably going to get her nowhere. So it's just going to be frustrating, and it's going to take forever. So treat this like a job. Set hours, find a good place to work, and this is the key. This is a great time to start making changes with family members. Great time for the kids to start taking on some additional chores and responsibilities that they're probably going to take on once you start working. Things are going to change, but you know what? Change is good. It's not a bad thing.
So Mary Beth, we had a question come in, and I know you're going to talk about some resources at the end, but this seems like a good place to do it. So if somebody is going to work with a counselor or a career advisor, how do they find them? How do they find a good local career counselor? For instance, one person, they asked about this specifically for the Seattle area.
Ooh, that is a very good question. I would talk to people in your area and see if anyone you know has worked with anyone before. A lot of my business, for example, comes through referrals from clients that I've worked with previously, or people that I know who are in related industries. I don't know, Annie, if you have any specific people, because I would say go to your if your alumni, see if your career center, see if they have any. Certainly you can Google people. I actually have clients I've worked with who have just found me on the internet. And certainly I would be, if I don't personally know anybody in Seattle. You don't always have to work with somebody in the same geographic area unless that's, something that's important to you. So I apologize, I don't have a really good answer for that.
Oh, no, that's okay. And
one thing that I would like anyways.
Well, it is hard to find a great, resource that will fit with you and have the same style and motivation and
exactly
and things like that. But there are some resources. You can definitely use the University of Chicago Alumni Directory to look for counselors. We don't have a lot, It's kind of a vague category, but there is that. You can also, the people that you do find locally that you've asked friends and family or found online, most of the time those individuals will have a free consultation meeting with you where you can just feel each other out, see what your styles are. So you can go and kind of interview your counselors and just see who works for you, even if you don't have a direct referral or connection. So that's what I'd recommend.
Sounds good. I would agree with that.
All right. Thanks, Mary Beth.
You're welcome. So talking about keeping your job search a priority, time management is really one of the challenging issues. And a number of months ago, I was working with a client, and we were doing some assessment work. And in her Myers-Briggs assessment, one of the things that came out of it was that deciding what she wasn't going to do was as important as deciding what she was going to do. And it just so resonated with me that I sort of have taken it personally. And there are times when I know that I need to be very focused on something, and I literally will make a list of the things that I'm not going to do. And I found it really, it's kind of funny, but I found it like really a powerful thing to do. It'll help you focus on high priority activities. Don't try to multitask. It doesn't work. I know we talk about that in our society, but it really doesn't. So focus on the things that you really want to do, the things that are really the highest priority to help you in your search, and find a dedicated place to work on your search. I know that this picture looks like something from the Hoarders TV show, which I have to admit I've never watched, but I've seen commercials for. But the point of it is, and no, this isn't my desk, but the point of it is if you're surrounded by a lot of distractions, it's going to be very hard to stay focused. So if you're working at maybe a desk in your home and you've got bills that are sitting there and you've got a pile of laundry next to you and you've got some prescriptions you need to have refilled, it is going to be really hard for you to focus on what you need to focus on. And as we all know, we do all this other stuff and then poof, all of a sudden the kids are home from school and, well, there's another day gone. So try to find a dedicated place that will work for you. And if you can have your own computer, your own laptop, they're not as expensive as they used to be, that would be really good, a really good investment as well. I do find clients who will say to me things like, oh, I can't, I know I need to work this cover letter for this job I'm applying for, and I told you I was going to send it to you tonight, but, my son's got a history paper, so I have to wait till he's done. If you can't afford it, that's fine, but if you can, it's a good investment because your job search shouldn't have to be second to your son's, history paper. And it's just as important. But then again, your kid shouldn't flunk out of school because you're applying for a job. So anyways, try to figure out that balance and dedicate a place to work. So whether it's a home office, going to the library, even just a card table in the corner. Personally, I think the kitchen table is the least desirable option because you will be, surrounded by lots of distractions. Starbucks has become the virtual office. Go there at 10:30 in the morning and you'll be amazed at the number of people that are working. Do a combination of the above. Mix it up. See what works for you. A couple of quick thoughts are, you don't have to build an addition onto your home or spend thousands of dollars on furniture. Just find a little segregated place to work or store your files, and it's just going to help you stay organized and help you stay focused. So we've talked about the 4 key ingredients to a successful job search. Now let's talk about the search itself. I like to think of it as an exploration. And just because you've decided to return to the workforce, doesn't necessarily mean that you're either, one, going to return to the same field you were in previously before your break, or two, that you know exactly what you want to do. But that's okay. Just start talking to people. Start exploring. Sometimes other people can see us better than we can see ourselves. So be receptive to ideas that other people have. I have to tell you personally, the idea of a career coach was not mine. It came from somebody else. And I'm so glad that I had that networking meeting with her, literally 3.5 years ago or 4 years ago, because had I not, I don't know what I'd be doing today, and I love what I do. So on the flip side, although people can come up with some really great, interesting ideas, sometimes people want to keep us in a box, the box that they knew us in. And if you're looking to get out of your box, don't feel like you have to stay in it if there's something else that you want to do. At some point, though, you're going to need to narrow your focus. And while you can still be looking for more than one kind of position, you can't have this really, really broad range of things that you want to do. There was a woman I networked with a few months ago. She was like a friend of a friend of a friend, and she was a stay-at-home mom, was getting back in the workforce, and so I was talking with her, and during the course of this lunch, she came up with about 5 different things she was thinking about doing, from consulting to teaching to starting her own business. And at the end of that conversation, I had absolutely no idea how I could help her because I had no idea what it was she was looking for. So you need to narrow your focus so that other people, can help you with your search. So let's talk a little bit about some tools that you should have for your search. And maybe some of you have all these already, and that's fabulous. If not, here's just a little bit of help and some samples of things you might look at. Business card. Frequently people don't have business cards, and it's sort of shocking to me. When I meet somebody, I want your contact information, and the easiest way to give it is in a business card. You don't want to be writing your email down on some little slip of paper and hoping they can read your writing. So these are 2 sample business cards. These are templates that are, I got these off of vistaprints.com, really inexpensive to get, and it shows you an example of how you might put something together with just some basic contact information. Your cell and your email are musts. Have a professional email, and I also suggest you have a separate email for your search. So in your email box, you will only have things that are search-related, job search-related, not, the carpool for the soccer team, things like that would be distracting. You don't have to put your address on your business card if you don't want. Some people just put a city and state. It's really up to you. And if you have young kids who might be answering a home phone, maybe you don't put that on there. Maybe you just keep you want control over, who's going to answer and how it's going to be answered. Put a little descriptor on there. So here I have Jane Smith, who's a marketing and public relations professional. Have a little descriptor of what it is that you're looking for, what it is your background is, what you're looking to do. Many people are including their LinkedIn address also on their business cards. So something to think about. And again, really inexpensive options, Vistaprint, Kinko's, the FedEx, you can do it all online, and it's kind of easy to have, and you should definitely have one.
Now, Mary Beth, we had a question related to the previous slide of how do you make that decision for the dream job that you think would be great, but it's kind of a stretch versus going for the thing that's a little bit more realistic, maybe matches your previous career or something like that. How do you make that decision to move forward?
Well, I think you make that decision by doing some research. And I think, you also have to measure it against certain, criteria, like if you have a need for income in the very near future, then probably that dream thing needs to be put on hold for a little while. If that's not an issue, then I would start talking to people and see what do you need to do to get that dream job. Maybe you need to go back and get, some kind of additional schooling or some kind of education or something like that. I tell people probably the best time to think about going back to the workforce is 2 years before you want to, or 2 years before you're planning on it, so that you can have this ramp time to do those kinds of things. And I think you really have to, there's all different kinds of dream jobs. What do you need to add to your current experience and your current education to be able to get into that field, and how difficult is it to get into that field?
Great, great, thank you. And then we had a question come in about the cards. And so if you are currently unemployed, you do put the industry that you're looking to go into.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, so you do put that descriptor there and you just focus on what you're going for.
Exactly, exactly. So when I get a card from somebody, I always write stuff on the back, like Jane Smith, met her at University of Chicago luncheon, sat two, blonde, red jackets, two seats to my right. So I remember who that person is, but also by putting, what it is you're looking for, or the area discipline that you're in, is going to help those people as well, versus something you don't put looking for a job.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We could spend the whole day talking about resumes, but I'm just going to touch on it, really, really briefly. And here's just some of the basics of what you should have on your resume. And hopefully you've noticed that we've pretty much gotten through like half this presentation, and the word resume hasn't come up once. And that's because it's really not the first step in a job search. Many people, that's the first thing they do. Oh, I got to put a resume together because I'm looking for a job. But I feel like there's lots of other things you need to do first so that you can put together then a really good resume that's fine-tuned for the kind of job that you're looking for. So some of the basics that you want to have on your resume is a profile, which is basically a summary of you, your experience, kind of what you're bringing to the table. Maybe some bullets would go underneath that with key skills, core competencies, qualifications, whatever you want to call them. They could be things like, project management, or decisive leader, or, things like that. Obviously, your prior work background should go on there. What I like people to do is to, if you have your title, a couple of sentences with what your responsibilities were, and then bullets underneath that with accomplishments. And, hopefully you can make those accomplishments as quantifiable as possible. That's really how resumes are done today. Volunteer experience, that's always a question that comes up. Should I include volunteer experience on my resume? And the answer is maybe, and only if it's relevant. If, for example, you were on a finance committee at, let's say, your church or your synagogue, and you're a finance professional and you're looking to get a job in finance, then yeah, I would include something like that. If you were the treasurer of, whatever, the Women's Club of, Chicago, yes, I would include something like that. If you were the person that went on all the kids' field trips, no, I wouldn't include that. It's not really relevant, and nobody really cares. So it shouldn't be something that just fills space in your resume, but something that's somewhat meaningful. Some of the things to consider when you're putting your resume together, and this is one of my really, really big ones, is that anybody looking for a new position, but especially those that have been out of the market for a while, putting the equal sign between the job requirements and your skills and background is really critical. So you want to make it easy for that hiring manager or that HR person to figure out why you're a great candidate for the position. So don't tell me that, well, it's buried in, the second page of my resume. Put it right out there as to, what it is that company is looking for, and it'll be in their qualifications and in their, what their responsibilities of the job, and what it is that you've done before, and how it is that you'll be the perfect person for them. So again, we could go on and talk about resumes for just about forever. There's really no perfect way to do a resume. There's a lot of really bad ways to do a resume. I would show resumes to other people, ask them for input. It's always a good way, especially people who are hiring managers, people who hire other people. What kind of things do they see? Well, I'm going to go back to the old Google thing. Google resumes. If you want to Google, I don't know, like an administrative assistant resume, you can put that in and things will pop up. So it's kind of amazing the things that are at at our fingertips. You don't.
No, Mary Beth.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just going to pop in. We do have a couple of little questions that I've been saving along the way
Sure.
pertaining to resumes.
Mm-hmm.
So one quick question is, do you have to put the year on your graduation date? Or on your education experience? Okay.
You actually don't have to do anything if you want to know the truth. You don't have to include all the jobs you've ever had. You don't have to put your graduation date. You know, there's really two schools of thought on that. One is like, you know, just do it, and the other is don't. I graduated from my undergrad in 1979. If I was doing a resume today, I would not include it.
Okay, good.
The date.
And then the other question, one of the other questions was, if you're not including every job, then how do you explain that gap if you're already trying to minimize the gap, the most recent gap?
Well, you can do things where you don't go into detail, like you put maybe your most recent positions, and then you put like a little section that would be called something like additional experience. And you would just put maybe where you worked, the name of the company, and like the title that you had, the position that you held, but only if it's important. You know, let's say that you graduated from school and you worked at Office Depot, you know, for 2 years before you actually got like a real career-related kind of job. I wouldn't put that Office Depot thing in. But if you, for example, started at Goldman Sachs and their, 2-year management trainee program, that's impressive, and companies look for that kind of foundation in people. So including something like that, I think, would be important.
Great.
But you don't need to go into all the details.
And then does the one-page rule still apply, was another question.
No. But the no more than 2-page rule does apply. So
Perfect.
2 pages is fine if you've been working for a while. 1 page is perfectly fine.
And so this is a general question about LinkedIn and profiles and resumes. What if you feel like your background is just out of date? So if you were in, IT, 15 years ago, it's very different than it is today, and there's not really a whole lot that you can do to shine that up because you just don't have the languages or the programs or whatever the case may be. How do you address that?
Well, I would, IT is kind of a unique one because there are, specific languages that are now, common today that, weren't back in the day. But I think you could probably talk about maybe some of the other things that you did that are more relevant, like maybe project management, for example. That's just sort of something that is, doesn't matter if you did it 15 years ago or you're doing it today. Certainly there's software that you could use today that maybe wasn't around. But, I think I try to find some things that that wouldn't date you but would be able to show your skills. And again, talk to somebody in the industry. Look at other people's LinkedIn profiles. See what they've put down. Great.
So focusing on those transferable skills. And then when you are applying for different jobs, people often tweak their resume. But what about your LinkedIn profile? Is that pretty static? Do you tweak that every time, or do you feel like it should just be broad enough to work for everything that you're applying for?
I think it just has to be, broad enough to work for, what you're applying for, because you can't control when somebody looks at your LinkedIn profile. And so if you were applying for, 2 different kinds of positions, if they're really dramatically different, it can be just a little challenging. And I tell people you just have to kind of pick one and sort of go that way with your LinkedIn profile. Maybe there's a way to show that you've done different things, or maybe through volunteer work, you did something, but and you can't have 2 LinkedIn profiles. Somebody asked me that one time. Can I just have 2? It's like, no, that's not a good idea either. It kind of looks like you don't know what you're doing actually on LinkedIn. That's what it looks like.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And so the last but not least, don't include personal information. It's not necessary, and nobody really cares, So if you're married, you got 2 kids, and you like to hike and read, good for you, but it's not really relevant to the position and to what that hiring manager is looking for. So we've talked about the business cards, we talked about the resume. Let's talk about a handbill. Not everybody is going to need a handbill, but depending on the type and the level of position that you're looking for, you may want to think about having one. And I'll answer kind of the basic question, which is, what is a handbill and how is it different than a resume? I heard somebody once describe a resume as looking back at what you've done, and a handbill as looking to the future. And I think that that's a good way to differentiate between the two. A resume describes, what you've accomplished, where you've worked, what your education is. And while there's some overlap, a handbill really focuses on more what you're looking for, the types of positions you might be looking for, the types of companies you're interested in working at, industries you might be interested in. And this is all about kind of what you're targeting. So I have a little, just a little outline, I guess, of a sample handbill here. And the way I think of a handbill is, if I was having a one-on-one networking meeting with Annie, and we were talking about, what I was looking for and the kinds of things I was thinking about, I would think of the handbill that I'm going to give her as almost being the notes from our meeting that I would have wanted her to take away and remember. So it's kind of a cheat sheet of helping somebody remember not only what your background is, which would be on your resume, but also what you're looking for. And it can trigger certain things. So if I say, oh, I'm interested in, working at XYZ company, she might say, oh, my next door neighbor works at XYZ. Like, oh, could you introduce me to them? I would really, like to talk about that organization and maybe some opportunities there. So again, depending on, the level of position you're looking for and type of industry, you may or may not need a handbill, but I think it's a great tool to use in your networking. So we've talked a little bit about the tools for your search. Let's now talk about the process of the search itself. Networking, researching positions and companies, and applying positions are all an integral part of a successful search and can and should be done simultaneously. So let's talk a little bit about each one of them. Networking, 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 the dreaded word. Everyone hates networking. And to be honest, I was never a good networker until I started my own business. But it's really, really important. And you hear all these statistics, that, 75% of people find jobs, through somebody they know. And it's true. And especially if you've been out of the workforce for a while, the people who are most likely to hire you or recommend you are people that you've worked with previously. They liked working with you before. They know they'd like working with you again. It doesn't matter that there's been 10 years in the interim. Develop your elevator pitch, which is basically a brief summary of your background and what you're looking for. Networking is not about asking people for a job. It's about having a conversation. And in that conversation, asking them for advice, for ideas, for counsel. It's about sharing. That's really what networking is about. And the elevator pitch, to me, I think of it as the answer to the question, tell me about yourself. So I have a couple of samples of ways that you could answer that tell me about yourself question. The first is, tell me about yourself. I'm a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids. I've been home for 6 years, and now I'm looking for a job. I used to work in marketing and brand management, blah, 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 blah. Alternatively, I could say to the question, tell me about yourself, I'm a marketing communications and brand management professional. I've worked on consumer packaged good brands like Tide and Keebler cookies, and I've taken a short career break, and now I'm looking to re-enter the market. And then you go on, obviously. So it's the same person, just talking about it in a different way, but what are you going to remember? In the first one, you're going to remember that person's a stay-at-home mom. That's not what you want them to remember. In the second one, you're going to remember that they're a marketing professional. So think about it. You might not feel like a marketing professional because you haven't done it for 10 years, but that is who you are. So think about that when you're doing your elevator pitch, when you're reconnecting with people, when you're meeting people for the first time. And reconnecting with former colleagues is really, I know sometimes it's hard to do, but LinkedIn has been such a godsend in helping us find people we've lost touch with. And you are frozen in time. So they're not thinking about you as, the carpool mom or the bake the cupcakes for the bake sale mom. They're thinking about you as the person who helped them on that project or who pitched in so that they could meet a deadline. That's how they're thinking of you. You are frozen in time to them. Network with everybody you know.
I'm sorry. We had a quick question. So for those people who you haven't talked to in 10 years, you're frozen in time. And so would you say that the best way to reach out to them is just to start from that point and, remind them that you worked with them that time and that you're still interested in doing X, Y, Z, or you're looking, kind of start to give your elevator pitch and just go from there?
Yeah. If I was connecting with somebody that I hadn't worked with or talked to in 10 years, I would probably I do a phone call or an email, just kind of initially to lead to something else. But let's say I would just call them up and say, hey, John, it's Mary Beth. I know we haven't talked in a long time. I really liked working with you when we worked together at, blah, blah, blah. And I've been out of the workforce for a little bit. I'm looking to get back in, and I would love to get some feedback or some thoughts or your ideas on the industry and what's happened in the last 10 years. Would you have time to meet me for coffee? That would be my pitch to somebody like that.
Perfect. And then for introverts, it is okay to use email or through LinkedIn, the InMail?
Yeah, I think it's fine, but it's not enough. It's like a good first step. I view it as kind of this, sending an email to set up a phone call to then meet in person, or sending an email to meet for coffee, kind of a thing. But an email is not, and different people will, some people are phone people, some people are email people. Email is not like a real relationship, a real conversation. I have 2 college kids. They'll say, I talked to so-and-so. What they really mean is we texted. It's not a conversation. It's not a real going back and forth. So what you want, if you want to do an email, do it to lead to something else, a phone call or preferably in person.
Great. Thank you.
And think about everybody you know. I mean, literally, when you're standing on the sidelines of a soccer game and there's somebody standing next to you and you kind of know, who they are and, but you really don't know what they do, perfect opportunity. You're talking about whatever, and you're like, Bob, what is it you do again? And they'll talk about themselves, and then they will logically say, and Mary Beth, what is it you do? They'll say, well, actually, I'm a marketing professional and blah, 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 blah. And, I'm looking to get, back in the workforce. And it becomes a conversation. And it's not quite as scary as you think it is. And I always go with what's the worst that happens? If you have like a something where you're tripping over yourself, whatever, it'll be better the next time. It's fine. It's like there's no, there's no rules and nobody's grading you on it. You just do better the next time. It's all good. So we talked about networking. Let's talk about research a little bit. Think about, this again goes back to some of the information on the handbill. Are there certain industries you're interested in? Do you want to be in a certain geographic area, like, 15 miles from home? Do you think a certain size company is going to fit you better? Think about all those kinds of things and do some research. Look up companies that are in your area. You can use, there's lots of different tools that you can use. A lot of the libraries have access to things like Reference USA or Hoover's, where you can look up companies. Look up companies on the local Chamber of Commerce. Lots of different ways you can look things up. And then by your network, where do the people you know work? That's a great way to think about, companies and follow those companies. What kind of positions are they posting? We'll talk a little bit about the application process in just a second, but you can have job openings sent to you. by following up, signing up to follow these companies, whether it's on their LinkedIn page or their Facebook page or their corporate website. So let's talk about applying for jobs a little bit. I am a firm believer in the 80% rule, meaning that if you don't meet 80% of what they're looking for, don't apply. Don't bother. Now, does it mean you can't do the job? No, that's not what it means at all. What it means is there are too many other really qualified candidates that are going to meet most of the criteria, and therefore you're not going to be considered. So it's really not about you not being able to do the job. It's about the very competitive talent pool that's out there. Again, apply online, but always try to find another way in. So if you apply for a job at Kraft, but you know somebody at Kraft, call that person. Tell them you applied for the job. Get the whatever number it is that they use, reference number or something, because they'll always want that. Ask them if they can also give your resume to maybe the hiring manager or the HR recruiter or whatever. Many companies consider employee referrals higher than just the general pool of people who apply for jobs. So apply online, but always try to find another way in. Always include a cover letter if you can. It really allows you to do that equal sign concept that I talk about, to help that hiring manager understand why you are a great candidate for the job. And follow up if you can. I know sometimes you apply online to a big thing and there's really no way you can follow up. That's fine. But if you have a name of a recruiter or an HR person or something, follow up. Don't be like a crazy person, but once a week is not once every 10 days. There's nothing wrong with that. So where are jobs posted? Many, many places. Companies post them on their websites, obviously. There's aggregator sites such as Indeed and Simply Hired that go out and pull job postings from other places like CareerBuilder and Monster. One of the sites I really like is called linkup.com. What it does is it goes and pulls postings directly from a company's website. So if you searched for the same type of position in, let's say, Indeed and in LinkUp, you're going to find many fewer positions in LinkUp, and that's probably because the other ones don't exist anymore, but they're kind of still hanging out there on the Internet. If you do find a position for a company through like an Indeed or a Simply Hired, I would always suggest that you go to the company's website to apply for the position. Just to make sure that it's real and that it's not like something that's, a year old, but somehow it's still out there. There's also industry-specific sites, and there's a lot of them. I don't have a list of them. I know some of them, but talk to people in the industry because they'll be the ones who know more. For nonprofits, npo.net is a great site. techpeopledice.com. So there's lots of different industry-specific sites. Talk to people in the industry. They'll know what those sites are. And on LinkedIn, companies now have pages on LinkedIn. You can see how many employees are on LinkedIn. You can see how you're connected to those employees, and they post jobs. And you can follow those companies, so any job openings that come up can be sent to you. It's really fabulous. And frequently on LinkedIn, you can see the recruiter at that company that posted that job. So now you have somebody to follow up with. Now you have somebody you can call. Now you have somebody you can email. It's really great. Also groups on LinkedIn. I'm on a couple of alumni groups on LinkedIn. Frequently I see job opportunities that people will say, hey, we're hiring a such and such at my company. I'd prefer U of C grads. So feel free to use those groups as well.
And we had a quick question about recruiters that you just mentioned on LinkedIn. Do you feel like recruiters are a valuable resource?
I think, yeah, that's kind of the next. There's different kinds of recruiters. There's internal recruiters, So people who work part of the HR staff for a company, and then there's search firms, which are external recruiters who are doing a search for a company. And I think that they are both valuable, but you need to look lots of different ways in lots of different places, and don't think that a recruiter is there to help you, because they are not. Doesn't make them bad people. I have friends who are recruiters, but their job is to fill a position for the company who is their client. You are not their client. So if you happen to be that perfectly round peg that fits into that perfectly round hole they're trying to fill, then they'll be all over you, but otherwise they won't. So don't rule them out, but if you've taken a career break, unless you've got some very unique background, you're probably not going to be attractive to an external recruiter. Temp agencies, on the other hand, that's a great way to get maybe some experience if you haven't worked in a while and you want to have some recent experience to reflect on your resume. I know a number of people who have done that, done some temp work in a related field before getting that final, that full-time position that they were looking for. Ooh, we are at 1 o'clock already. So, in summary,
jump on and say, Mary Beth, I hope we can continue for a few more minutes to finish up. And anyone who is on the line who cannot hang on, I am recording this, and I will be sending out the full recording. So if you missed the last couple of minutes, don't worry. And I apologize, everybody, for running late. There's so many good questions. I know we've been stopping you, Mary Beth, every couple of sentences.
Not a problem. Actually, the biggest challenge in putting this presentation together was not having it last all day. So, so just to summarize, returning to work after you've taken a career break, or actually, looking for any kind of position, a job search is really a marathon. It's not a sprint. So pace yourself. When you network, have goals. The goal is not just to meet with somebody. The goal is to get something out of that meeting. So whether it's getting the name of 2 contacts you can follow up with, or getting information about a company, or whatever. That old saying about it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I'm a firm believer that it takes a village to find a job. So use your village to help you. And remember that networking goes 2 ways. It's really about how people can help you, but it's about how you can help them. And don't think because you're not working you can't help people. Sometimes the way people need help has nothing to do with their job or their industry. 2 summers ago, I was meeting with somebody, and I said, how can I help you? And the person said to me, well, actually, it's not about me, but my daughter is a senior in high school, and she's looking for a summer job. And I said, oh, I have a daughter who's a senior in high school. And I know she just got 2 job offers that she turned down because they were part-time, like summer counselor camp things, and she found a full-time thing that was 40 hours a week. So I gave that information to him as soon as I got back to my computer, and, voila, his daughter ended up getting a part-time summer job. So you just, sometimes the ways people need help is not what you think it might be. Be positive. I know it's hard to stay upbeat. Be specific as to what you're looking for. Develop your elevator pitch and use it so it becomes very natural. It's a tough economy. It's a very competitive job market. Be realistic. Try not to take it personally. People don't return calls. It's just the way our world is. It's not a good way, but it is. So just don't take it personally. And follow up. I have a client I'm meeting with in an hour who prepping for an interview that he had applied for 6 weeks ago, followed up a number of times and pretty much given up on it, and he got a call 2 days ago saying, hey, you want to come in for an interview on Friday. So don't give up. Continue to follow up on things. Think outside the box. We talked about temp work, maybe doing a consulting project or some kind of a contract position. All these can turn into full-time positions. And it can add current experience to your resume if that's something that you're lacking. Internships are another thing to think about. I have 2 kids in college. College is all about internships, about getting internships, getting real-life experience while you're in college. I think, there's no reason adults can't do internships as well. I had a client who was a PhD in neuroscience and had been out of the field for a while. So my thought to her was, go back to your former professors and the people you work with. See if you can intern with them. Get back in the field. Get back up to speed on what's going on. I think you might have to do it for free, but it might be really valuable experience and connections to help you find that job. Maybe owning your own business or having a franchise might be something to think about too. And sort of last but not least, try to be patient and always be thankful. Always thank those people who have helped you, even if nothing came of it. Even if they put you in touch with somebody but nothing happened, or they passed your resume along but nothing happened. It's what they did, that's important, not the actual outcome. So be thankful and keep them posted during your search. Let them know how you're doing, and certainly let them know when you land. They have invested in you by being part of your village and being part of your search. So make sure that you acknowledge that and are appreciative of it. And then lastly, I just thought I'd leave you with a few resources that you might want to tap into. Obviously, Annie's the expert on the University of Chicago Alumni Career Services, and she can speak more to that. But, whether it's University of Chicago or you did your undergrad or grad work at some other university, think about tapping into their alumni services, and many schools have, alumni career services now too. Anybody in the Chicago area that would be interested, is interested in going back to work, there's an event at the Chicago Botanic Gardens on October 15th through a group called MakeItBetter.net about returning to work. It's like a 9 to 2 kind of a thing. Go on their website. It might be something you might want to think about. And then there's a book I recommend called Back on the Career Track, and it's written by 2 women, Harvard MBAs, who worked on Wall Street, took a career break. I think between the 2 of them, they have like 11 kids or something. It's like a whole boatload of kids. Both went back to work, met each other through a mutual friend, ended up writing this book, and then created this business called irelaunch.com. So there's some good resources there. And then Glassdoor.com, I don't know if that's something you're familiar with, but that's another good resource because it shares information on salaries at companies. It will share, people will post things like, here's the kinds of interview questions I was asked. It's a really interesting website, and one I would suggest that you look into. So, and I've included my contact information as well. If you have additional questions or I can help you with your search, feel free to reach out to me. And I apologize that we went a little bit over, but Annie, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great. Do you mind if we ask 2 last final questions?
Sure.
Okay. So the first one is, what if you're only out for 1 year? Does the strategy change versus being out for 5 or 10 years or more versus just that 1 year, or is it the same?
Well, I mean, I think, I think in general it's kind of the same because a job search is a job search, but, the person that's only out for a year isn't going to be behind in technology and isn't probably going to have to, rekindle relationships from the last 10 years and some things like that. But a lot of the things, hold true as far as, networking and all of that kind of thing, hold true.
Great. And then the other question that came in, and it goes with how you mentioned you should prepare to return to work 2 years before you're actually planning to. What if this is before you're taking that gap or having children yet, but you see it in your future? How do you prepare before you leave your job?
That is a super great question. I love proactive people. I think the way that you prepare is to make sure that you plan to stay connected. And staying connected in all different kinds of ways with people, you stay connected with your industry groups that maybe you belong to now. You know, if you're a CPA, for example, you know, don't stop your continuing ed. Continue doing that. Continue going to the, you know, Illinois CPA Society meetings or whatever it is. If you're an attorney, you know, again, continue your continuing ed and pay your bar fees and all that kind of stuff. Don't give those things up and stay, you know, stay connected. And I think by staying connected and being up to speed on what's going on in the industry and knowing, you know, if there's like new tax code that came out or whatever, then when you are ready to go back, you're not an antique. You know, you're contemporary. And I think there's other, depending on the type of business you're in, you know, maybe you stay on as doing some kind of part-time work or project work or consulting work so that you're keeping your fingers in it and you don't kind of go cold turkey. That would be the best advice I could give.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. I apologize to everyone for making everyone run a little bit late, but thank you so much, Mary Beth, for hanging on here with us for an extra couple of minutes.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you have any questions, just email me at anniewhite@uchicago.edu, and we hope to see you here again next month for the new job market on October 25th at noon Central. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Annie. Take care.